Maria arrived home after another tiring day at work. Her teaching routine filled her time, but her heart remained empty. The small apartment seemed like a reflection of her life, organized, but silent and colorless. She hung up her coat, feeling the weight of the repetitive days, and decided to organize some forgotten things at the bottom of the closet. A habit she developed to occupy her mind and avoid the thoughts that always haunted her. It was then that, as she pulled out an old dusty box, Maria stopped. She recognized the box immediately. It was what was left of the few months of her pregnancy. Trembling slightly, she opened the lid and found small reminders of what could have been. A pair of blue shoes, a jumpsuit still with the tag, and at the bottom, the diary she wrote for her son. Maria hesitated, but ended up taking the notebook in her hands, smelling the old paper that brought back memories as sweet as they were painful. She sat down on the couch and, with a heavy sigh, opened the diary to the first page. "Dear son, today I learned that you are on the way." She began to read, and tears came without warning. Each line was a portrait of hope and love, a narrative of a future that never came to fruition. The pages were filled with promise, walks in the park, bedtime stories, and all the little moments she had dreamed of sharing. As she read, Maria felt a mixture of joy and intense sadness. It was like reliving the moments of anticipation and the days when she believed she would finally be a mother. But soon, the narrative turned dark. The words recorded the day everything changed, when the ultrasound showed that the baby's heart had stopped. The words became more spaced out, and the pain was evident on every page. Maria quickly closed the diary, trying to contain the storm of emotions. But something urged her to continue. She didn't want to face that pain again, but the diary seemed to be calling her, as if there was something more to be discovered. Without knowing exactly why, she put the notebook next to her, feeling that, somehow, the past was trying to speak to her. Maria looked at her watch and realized that she had lost track of time. She stood up slowly, with a heavy heart, and promised herself that she would not leave the diary forgotten again. Little did she know that this reunion with her memories was about to change everything. The next morning, Maria woke up with a heavy heart, still feeling the echoes of what she had read the night before. She hesitated before picking up the diary again, but an inexplicable curiosity drove her to continue. Sitting at the kitchen table, with a cup of coffee that was already going cold, she opened the notebook once more, determined to face her memories. Familiar pages followed one another, showing the ups and downs of the pregnancy until the tragic moment of loss. But then, something unexpected happened. Maria found pages that she did not remember writing. The words were not hers. The sentences had a different tone, almost childlike, as if they were written by the imagination of the child who never came into the world. Mom. I've always wondered what it would be like to play in the park with you. To see you smile as you pushed me on the swing. Maria felt a shiver run through her body. The words were simple, but deeply moving. She flipped through a few more pages and realized that these messages were all over the diary, written so vividly that they seemed real. Maria's head was spinning. Could it be that she had written them herself during a bout of grief, trying to comfort herself? The words seemed to echo the dream she had for her son, but they were written in such an intimate way that Maria couldn't remember writing them. The sentences brought up scenarios from an imagined life, as if her son were guiding her through a parallel reality where they had shared a life together. Each new line she read was a mixed blow of love and sadness. "I like it when you read me stories before bed, Mommy. You always choose the best adventures." Maria held herself back from breaking down right there. These pages were a window into a universe where her son had grown up by her side, even if only in her imagination. Maria closed the diary and rested her head in her hands. She didn't know if it was a comfort or a torment, but she felt an inexplicable connection with those words. Part of her wanted to believe that her son was, in some way, talking to her, filling the voids left by the loss. Another, more rational part, fought against the idea that it was just her mind trying to deal with grief. It was as if the diary had taken on a life of its own, revealing what Maria most wanted to hear but also challenging her to confront what she had never overcome. In that moment, she realized that she needed help to understand what was happening. And most of all, she needed to face the pain she had been avoiding. Still troubled by the pages she couldn't seem to remember writing, Maria knew she could no longer ignore the whirlwind of emotions the diary was stirring. Later that week, she decided to do something she had long put off. Join a support group for mothers who, like her, had grieved the loss of their children. With a mixture of hesitation and hope, Maria walked into the small meeting room at the community center, where a few women were already seated in chairs arranged in a circle. She felt the sympathetic gaze of other mothers, women who, like her, carried an invisible grief in their hearts. During the introductions, Maria limited herself to saying her name and that she had lost a baby a few years ago. It was difficult to put into words what she felt. The pain seemed old, but at the same time it pulsed with the strength of a fresh wound. When it was Clara's turn to speak, Maria found herself drawn to the sincerity in her eyes and the calm way in which she told her own story. Clara had lost her son at birth. She was a strong woman, but there was a vulnerability in her voice that Maria recognized. After the meeting, as everyone dispersed, Clara approached and offered a welcoming smile. They began to chat, initially about trivial matters, but the conversation soon deepened, driven by the sharing of experiences that only those who had experienced loss could understand. Clara spoke about the ups and downs of her journey of grief, mentioning how sometimes it seemed impossible to move on. Maria, in an impulse that not even she understood, decided to mention the diary and the messages she had found. To her surprise, Clara did not look at her with judgment, but with understanding. "I also wrote letters to my son," Clara confessed, her eyes downcast. "I never had the courage to read them after everything happened. Sometimes I think they are a part of me that was trapped in the past." Maria felt a tightness in her chest when she heard those words. It was as if Clara was putting into words something that she herself had never been able to express. The two continued talking, finding unexpected comfort in each other. Clara suggested that perhaps these messages were a way for Maria to process her grief, a coping mechanism that helped her keep the memory of her son alive. For the first time, Maria felt that she was not alone in her grief. Although the diary was still a mystery, she now had Clara to help her navigate this new and confusing phase of her life. Together, they found a connection in their stories, and Maria began to see that perhaps, with help, she could finally find peace. The following weeks brought a new routine for Maria and Clara. They met regularly, sometimes in a support group, sometimes for a casual coffee, where they shared memories and vented. The friendship that had developed became a safe haven for both of them. Maria continued to read the pages of the diary, and with each reading, she felt her bond with her son grow stronger, but also a growing uneasiness. The words that came from her son's perspective were a painful solace. They comforted her, but they also trapped her in a cycle of grief. In a more private meeting, Maria took the diary and showed Clara the pages that tormented her so much. Clara read it in silence, her eyes scanning the lines filled with love and longing. When she finished, she handed the notebook back to Maria with a look of understanding and sadness. "This is beautiful, Maria. But have you ever thought about whether these words are helping you or keeping you trapped in the past?" Clara asked, her voice soft but full of concern. "Writing was my way of dealing with the pain, but I never had the courage to reread my letters. I'm afraid that if I did, I would never be able to let go." Maria remained silent, absorbing Clara's words. She felt understood, but also confronted by the reality she had been trying to avoid. The diary was a bridge to an imagined life with her son, but it was also an obstacle to moving forward. The internal struggle between keeping this memory alive and accepting the loss became more evident than ever. A few days later at home, Maria found a final message that she had never seen before. The handwriting, as always, was simple and touching. "Mommy, don't be afraid to move forward. I will always be with you, in every smile, in every step." The words resonated deeply in Maria, like an echo of what Clara had said, but coming from the voice that mattered most to her. Maria closed the diary, tears streaming freely down her face. It was a moment of farewell, not to the love for her son, but to the weight of grief she carried. She finally understood that she could no longer hide behind those words. She had to find a way to honor her son's memory without losing herself in the past. Determined, Maria called Clara and together they began to research adoption. It was a new, uncertain path, but one that brought a spark of hope. Maria was not ready to leave the past behind, but she was willing to make room for a new future. The months that followed were marked by a slow but significant process of transformation for Maria. She and Clara continued to support each other, sharing moments of anxiety and hope as Maria moved forward on the path to adoption. The conversations that had previously revolved around pain and longing now turned to the expectation of a new beginning. Finally, the day arrived. Maria was called to the shelter to meet the child who could become her daughter. Anxiously, she entered the bright room, where a girl with curly hair and curious eyes watched her with a shy smile. Maria felt a warmth flood her chest. This was not a replacement for her lost child, but a new chance to love. Over the weeks, Maria and little Luisa gradually grew closer. With every smile, every bedtime story, Maria felt the weight of grief being lifted into something lighter, a sweet reminder of the love that never disappeared, just found a new destiny. Luisa was full of life, with a curiosity that brightened Maria's day and filled her home with sounds that had been missing for a long time. One night, while reading a bedtime story to Luisa, Maria realized that it was the first time in a long time that she had told a story without the pain of the diary pages. She looked at the little girl, who was listening intently to every word, and felt a peace that she had not experienced in a long time. After Luisa fell asleep, Maria picked up the diary one last time. Instead of regret, she felt a deep gratitude. She carefully stored it in a box, no longer as an anchor to the past, but as a tribute to the love that had helped her get to this point. A few days later, Maria and Clara were at the park with their children. The sun was shining, and the children's laughter filled the air. Clara looked at Maria and smiling said, "It's funny how life always finds a way to go on, even when we think all is lost." Maria nodded, watching Luisa run happily. She knew that the journey had not been easy, but as she watched her daughter play, she finally understood that goodbyes did not mean the end, but rather the opening of new possibilities. And so, Maria found a new rhythm for her life. The past was no longer a shadow, but a part of her story that strengthened her. In Luisa, she saw the continuation of the love that never faded, and in Clara, she found a friend who helped her to reframe her pain. Together, these experiences transformed her, showing her that, even after the greatest losses, there is always the chance to start over.